approach the northeastern corner of the Great Pyramid, where the original entrance pierces the monument's face some 55 feet above the base. The limestone blocks here are massive, each one carefully fitted against its neighbors with a precision that speaks to the mathematical genius of the ancient builders. Your fingers trace along the edge of one block, feeling the subtle tool marks left by copper chisels and the gentle erosion of millennia. The stone is warm to the touch, already absorbing the heat of the day. The pyramid's base stretches out before you, each side measuring over 750 feet in length. You begin to walk along the northern face, your footsteps creating small puffs of dust that catch in the morning light. The scale becomes more apparent with each step. This is not merely a building, but a constructed mountain containing over 2 million stone blocks. The ancient Egyptians called it Achet Khufu, the horizon of Khufu, and standing here, you understand why. It dominates the horizon like a second sunrise, a monument to human ambition carved from the living rock of the plateau itself. As you round the northeastern corner and begin walking along the eastern face, you notice how the pyramid's shadow creates its own microclimate. The temperature drops several degrees in the shade, and the air feels different, cooler, more still. Here, against the eastern face, you can see the remains of Khufu's mortuary temple, now reduced to foundation stones and scattered blocks. You kneel and place your palm flat against one of these ancient stones, feeling its coolness and the slight roughness of its surface. Somewhere beneath your hand, hieroglyphs once proclaimed the divine nature of the pharaoh and his journey to the afterlife. The sound of your breathing seems amplified in this space between the pyramid and the temple ruins. You can hear the distant call of a kite circling overhead, its cry echoing off the limestone faces. The bird's shadow passes over you, a brief moment of coolness, and you look up to see it riding the thermals that rise from the heated stones. Even the wildlife here seems ancient, unchanged from the days when workers hauled blocks up earthen ramps and priests performed daily rituals for the dead king. You continue walking now along the southern face, where the sun strikes the stones more directly. The heat here is more intense, and you can feel it radiating up from the ground through the soles of your shoes. The limestone blocks show more weathering on this side, their edges softened by the relentless southern sun and the seasonal winds that carry sand from deeper in the desert. Some blocks bear the marks of medieval stone robbers, rough gouges where valuable casing stones were pried away to build the mosques and palaces of Cairo. Halfway along the southern face, you pause and look up toward the apex of the pyramid. From this angle, the structure seems to lean slightly, an optical illusion created by its immense scale and the way the morning light falls across its faces. You can see where the smooth outer casing once covered these rough core blocks, transforming the stepped appearance into a perfect geometric form that would have gleamed like a beacon across the Nile Valley. Only a few casing stones remain at the base, their polished surfaces still catching and reflecting light after more than 4,000 years. The western face offers relief from the direct sunlight, and here you find a different quality of stillness. This is the side that faces the setting sun, the direction of the afterlife in ancient Egyptian cosmology. The blocks here seem more weathered, worn by thousands of years of afternoon heat followed by the rapid cooling of desert nights. You run your hand along a vertical joint between two massive blocks, feeling Specifically, they were fitted together without mortar, held in place by their own weight and the precision of their cutting. As you complete your circuit around the base, you notice how your perception of the pyramid has changed. What seemed like a single, monolithic structure from a distance reveals itself to be composed of millions of individual elements, each block cut, transported, and positioned by human hands. The morning sun has climbed higher now, and the shadows are shorter, the light more intense. You can feel the heat beginning to build in the stones beneath your feet, the daily cycle of thermal expansion that has been slowly reshaping this monument for millennia. Near the northern face again, you find the entrance to Al-Mamun's tunnel, carved in 820 CE by the Abbasid Caliph's men in search of treasure. The opening is a rough wound in the otherwise precise masonry, a reminder that this pyramid has been explored and wondered at for over 1,000 years. The darkness beyond the entrance seems to breathe with the temperature differential between the hot exterior and the cool interior passages. You can feel a slight movement of air, the pyramid's own respiration as it heats and cools with the cycle of day and night. You duck through the modern entrance and immediately feel the temperature drop. The air inside is cool and dry, carrying a faint mineral scent from the limestone and the deeper, more complex aroma of age itself. Your eyes adjust slowly to the dim artificial lighting, and you begin to make out the rough-hewn walls of Al-Mamun's tunnel. The ceiling is low here, forcing you to walk in a slight crouch, your shoulders occasionally brushing against the stone walls. The tunnel slopes downward at first, following the path carved by medieval treasure hunters who believed the pyramid's secrets lay in its depths. The sound of your footsteps changes here, becoming more muffled and intimate. Each step echoes briefly before being absorbed by the massive weight of stone surrounding you. You can hear the voices of other visitors ahead and behind you, but they seem distant and dreamlike in this enclosed space. After several minutes of walking, you reach the junction where Al-Mamun's tunnel intersects with the original descending passage. Here, you can see the precision of the ancient builders in stark contrast to the rough medieval excavation. The original passage is cut with laser-like accuracy, its walls smooth and its angles perfect. You run your fingers along the transition between old and new stonework, feeling the difference in texture and technique separated by over 1,000 years. The ascending passage begins here, climbing upward at a steep angle toward the heart of the pyramid. The ceiling is higher now, but the passage is narrow, forcing you to walk single file with other visitors. The limestone walls are worn smooth by millions of hands that have steadied themselves during the climb. Your own palm joins this ancient procession, feeling the slight warmth left by the person ahead of you, and adding your own heat to the stone. The climb is steady and demanding. Your breathing becomes more conscious as you work your way up the inclined passage, the sound of your exertion mixing with that of others making the same journey. The air moves differently here, flowing down from the upper chambers with a coolness that speaks of vast enclosed spaces above. You can smell the stone dust disturbed by countless footsteps, and occasionally catch a whiff of the wooden railings that have been installed to help modern visitors navigate passages designed for ancient priests and workers. Halfway up the ascending passage, you pause to rest, pressing your back against the smooth limestone wall. The stone is cool against your spine, and you can feel the incredible weight of the pyramid Somewhere above your head are over 1,000,000 tons of precisely placed stone blocks, held in perfect balance by the genius of the ancient architects. The thought is both humbling and exhilarating. You are inside one of humanity's greatest achievements, surrounded by the work of hands that have been dust for 4 millennia. The grand gallery opens before you like a cathedral carved from stone. The ceiling soars overhead, corbelled in 7 courses that create a sense of vertical grandeur impossible to capture in photographs. The acoustics here are remarkable. Your footsteps create a complex pattern of echoes that seem to climb the walls and disappear into the shadows above. The gallery is nearly 150 feet long and almost 30 feet high, a masterpiece of engineering that has stood unchanged since the reign of Khufu. You walk slowly up the grand gallery's central ramp, your hand trailing along the smooth limestone wall. The blocks here are fitted so precisely that you can barely detect the joints between them. The corbelled ceiling creates a play of light and shadow that shifts as you move, the artificial lighting casting geometric patterns that dance across the ancient stonework. Each step carries you higher into the pyramid's heart, closer to the chamber that was built to house a pharaoh's journey to eternity. At the top of the grand gallery, you pause before entering the king's chamber. The transition is marked by a low passage that forces you to duck once again, a deliberate architectural choice that creates a sense of anticipation and reverence. The granite here is different from the limestone of the lower passages, harder, more precisely cut, brought from quarries 600 miles to the south at Aswan. Your fingers trace the smooth surface, feeling the subtle variations in the stone's crystalline structure. The king's chamber itself is a masterpiece of geometric precision. The walls, floor, and ceiling are all cut from red granite, polished to a mirror finish that still gleams after 4.5 millennia. The chamber measures exactly twice as long as it is wide, its proportions based on mathematical relationships that the ancient Egyptians considered sacred. You stand in the center of the room, slowly turning to take in each wall, feeling the perfect acoustics that make even your breathing seem significant. The sarcophagus sits at the western end of the chamber, carved from a single block of granite and positioned with mathematical precision. You approach it slowly, your footsteps echoing in the confined space. The sarcophagus is empty now. It was found that way when the first modern explorers entered the chamber, but you can feel the weight of its intended purpose. This was meant to be the final resting place of a god-king, the chamber where Khufu would begin his journey through the afterlife. You place your hands on the rim of the sarcophagus, feeling the smooth granite that was shaped by copper tools and abrasive sand. The stone is cool to the touch, its temperature constant in this climate-controlled environment deep within the pyramid. The craftsmanship is extraordinary. The interior surfaces are perfectly smooth, the corners sharp and true. You can see tool marks from the ancient craftsmen, subtle ridges that speak to the human hands that shaped this eternal vessel. Emerging from the Great Pyramid into the bright afternoon sun, you feel the heat strike your skin like a physical force. Your eyes water slightly as they readjust to the brilliant light reflecting off the limestone plateau. The temperature difference is startling, from the cool, constant environment inside the pyramid to the building heat of the Egyptian afternoon. You pause in the shadow of Khufu's monument, letting your body acclimate to the change. The walk to the pyramid of Khafre takes you across the central area of the Giza complex, where scattered blocks and the foundations of smaller structures create a landscape of archaeological fragments. Your feet crunch on the gravel and sand that have accumulated between the ancient stones, and you can hear the distant voices of tour groups and the occasional call of vendors selling water and souvenirs near the site boundaries. Khafre's pyramid appears taller than Khufu's as you approach, an illusion created by its position on slightly higher ground and the fact that it retains some of its original casing stones at the apex. These remaining casing stones give you a glimpse of how magnificent the pyramids must have looked when they were complete. Smooth, gleaming surfaces that would have reflected the sun like mirrors and been visible from miles away across the Nile Valley. The base of Khafre's pyramid is slightly smaller than that of his father Khufu, but the structure feels more intact, more complete in its presentation. You begin walking around its perimeter, noting how the desert sand has accumulated higher against this pyramid's base, creating natural ramps that bring you closer to the original entrance level. The limestone blocks here show different weathering patterns, and you can see where ancient and medieval visitors carved graffiti into the softer stone. On the eastern side of Khafre's pyramid, the mortuary temple is much better preserved than Khufu's. You can walk among the massive granite blocks that once formed the temple's walls, feeling their weight and permanence. These blocks are enormous, some weighing over 100 tons, and were transported from Aswan and fitted together with the same precision found in the pyramid itself. The temple's floor plan is still clearly visible, marked by foundation stones and the remains of walls that once enclosed sacred spaces. You sit on one of the fallen granite blocks in what was once the temple's courtyard, feeling the stone's warmth through your clothing. From this position, you can see both the pyramid rising behind you and the causeway that once connected this temple to the valley temple below. The causeway is mostly buried now under sand and modern development, but you can trace its path with your eyes, imagining the processions that once moved along it, carrying the pharaoh's mummy and grave goods to their final resting place. The afternoon sun has moved across the sky, and the shadows are beginning to lengthen. The quality of light is changing, becoming warmer and more golden as it approaches the golden hour that photographers prize. You can feel this change not just in the light, but in the temperature. The stones are still hot from the day's heat, but there's a subtle shift in the air that speaks of the cooling that will come with evening. Walking around to the western side of Khafre's pyramid, you find yourself looking out over the desert that stretches toward the horizon. Here, away from the tourist areas, the silence is more complete. You can hear the wind moving across the sand, a soft whisper that has been constant since the pyramids were built. Occasionally, a bird calls from somewhere in the complex, or you catch the distant sound of traffic from the modern city that has grown up around these ancient monuments. The pyramid's western face shows the most dramatic weathering, with some blocks so eroded that their edges have become rounded. You can see how the desert has claimed parts of the structure over the millennia, sand accumulating in crevices and wind carving subtle patterns in the limestone. Yet the overall form remains intact, testament to the skill of the builders and the durability of their materials. As you complete your circuit of Khafre's pyramid, you notice how the complex begins to make sense as a unified design. The pyramids are not randomly placed, but carefully positioned in relationship to each other and to the cardinal directions. From certain angles, they align in ways that create dramatic visual effects, and you begin to understand how the ancient architects used the natural topography of the plateau to enhance their monument's impact. The path from Khafre's pyramid down to the Sphinx takes you along the ancient causeway route. Though most of the original structure is buried beneath sand and modern development, you can feel the slight downward slope as you descend from the pyramid plateau toward the valley floor, following the same path that funeral processions took over 4,000 years ago. The quality of the stone changes as you walk, from the weathered limestone of the pyramid area to the more protected blocks that were buried until recent archaeological excavations. The Great Sphinx emerges gradually as you approach, first just the top of its head, visible above the surrounding walls, then slowly revealing its full majesty as you enter the enclosure. The impact is immediate and visceral. This is not just a statue, but a living presence carved from the bedrock of the plateau itself. The Sphinx faces due east toward the rising sun, its weathered features still commanding after more than 4 millennia of desert winds and sandstorms. You approach the viewing area in front of the Sphinx, feeling the change in atmosphere that comes from being in the presence of something truly ancient and mysterious. The limestone from which it was carved is different from the pyramid stones, softer, more susceptible to weathering, which has given the monument its distinctive weathered appearance. You can see the layers of geological time in the Sphinx's body, horizontal bands of limestone that speak to the ancient sea that once covered this area. The face of the Sphinx, though damaged by time and human interference, still retains its power to inspire awe. The features are massive. The nose alone, before it was damaged, was over 5 feet long. You study the face from different angles, seeing how the ancient sculptors worked with the natural contours of the bedrock to create their masterpiece. The eyes, each over 6 feet wide, seem to gaze eternally toward the horizon, watching the sun rise as they have for thousands of years. Walking around to the side of the Sphinx, you can better appreciate its scale and the skill required to carve it. The body stretches over 200 feet in length, carved from a single outcrop of limestone. You can see the tool marks left by the ancient workers, subtle ridges and patterns that speak to the human effort required to shape this monument. The paws, each over 50 feet long, are carved with remarkable detail, showing individual toes and claws despite their enormous size. The enclosure around the Sphinx creates its own microenvironment. The walls, cut deep into the bedrock, provide shelter from the wind and create interesting acoustic effects. You can hear your footsteps echoing off the limestone walls, and the voices of other visitors seem to bounce and multiply in the enclosed space. The temperature here is slightly cooler than on the open plateau, the walls providing shade for part of the day and thermal mass that moderates the extremes of desert climate. Between the Sphinx's paws stands the dream stela of Thutmose IV, a granite monument that tells the story of how the future pharaohs cleared sand from the Sphinx after it appeared to him in a dream. The hieroglyphic text is still clearly visible, carved deep into the red granite. You can trace the individual hieroglyphs with your eyes, each one a small work of art that contributes to the larger narrative of divine kingship and the relationship between the pharaohs and the gods. Valley Temple of Khafre sits just south of the Sphinx, its massive granite blocks creating one of the most impressive examples of Old Kingdom architecture. You enter through the modern entrance, immediately struck by the temple's austere grandeur. The walls are lined with enormous granite blocks, some weighing over 100 tons, fitted together with joints so tight that you cannot slip a piece of paper between them. Inside the Valley Temple, the atmosphere is hushed and reverent. The granite walls rise around you, their polished surfaces still reflecting light after 4.5 millennia. The temple's halls are filled with a soft, indirect light that filters down from clear-story windows, creating an environment that feels both ancient and timeless. You can hear the sound of your footsteps on the granite floor, each step creating a brief echo that speaks to the acoustic properties of the space. The temple's main hall contains the remains of statue bases where colossal images of Khafre once stood. You can see the depressions in the granite floor where these statues were positioned, and imagine the hall as it once was, filled with images of the divine pharaoh. The craftsmanship is extraordinary. The granite surfaces are polished to a mirror finish, and the joints between blocks are so precise that they seem to form a single, monolithic structure. As you explore the temple's chambers, you begin to understand its function in the ancient funerary complex. This was where the pharaoh's body was prepared for burial, where the rituals of mummification were completed and the final ceremonies performed before. The mummy was transported up the causeway to the pyramid. The temple's design reflects this sacred purpose, with chambers and passages that create a progression from the earthly realm to the divine. The climb to the panoramic viewpoint south of the pyramids takes you up a rocky path that winds through the desert landscape. Your feet find purchase on the limestone bedrock, worn smooth by countless visitors but still providing secure footing. The afternoon sun is lower now, approaching the golden hour, and you can feel the day's heat beginning to dissipate from the stones beneath your feet. As you climb higher, the full scope of the Giza complex begins to reveal itself. The 3 main pyramids align in a diagonal that follows the course of the Nile, their positions carefully calculated to create maximum visual impact from various viewpoints. You can see the smaller Queen's pyramids clustered around each main monument, and the mastaba tombs of nobles and officials scattered across the plateau, like a city of the dead. The viewpoint itself is a natural rocky outcrop that provides an elevated perspective over the entire necropolis. You settle onto the warm limestone, feeling its heat through your clothing and the way it radiates warmth even as the air temperature begins to cool. From this position, you can see Cairo's modern skyline in the distance, a reminder of how the ancient and contemporary worlds coexist in this remarkable place. The sun continues its descent toward the western horizon, and the quality of light begins to change dramatically. The harsh white light of midday gives way to warmer tones, first pale gold, then deeper amber as the sun approaches the horizon. The pyramids, which appeared stark and geometric in the bright daylight, begin to take on a softer, more mysterious character as the shadows lengthen and the light becomes more directional. You watch as the shadows of the pyramids stretch across the plateau, dark triangles that point eastward toward the Nile and the land of the living. The ancient Egyptians believed that the dead pharaohs sailed across the sky with the sun god Ra, and from this vantage point, you can almost most see the cosmic symbolism that guided the monument's design. The pyramids are not just tombs, but models of the primordial mound from which all creation emerged. The Great Pyramid, directly in front of you, dominates the view even from this elevated position. Its massive bulk seems to anchor the entire complex, the other monuments arranged around it like satellites orbiting a planet. You can see tourists moving around its base, tiny figures that emphasize the monument's incredible scale. Even from this distance, you can make out individual blocks in the pyramid structure, each one a testament to the skill and determination of its builders. As the sun drops lower, the temperature begins to fall noticeably. The desert's lack of humidity means that heat dissipates quickly once the sun's direct rays weaken, and you can feel the coolness beginning to rise from the stones. This daily cycle of heating and cooling has been reshaping the monuments for millennia, causing the limestone to expand and contract in an endless rhythm that slowly weathers the precise edges carved by ancient craftsmen. The Sphinx, visible in the middle distance, seems to come alive in the changing light. The weathered features of its face catch the golden rays, creating patterns of light and shadow that emphasize its mysterious expression. From this angle, you can better appreciate how the monument was positioned to face the rising sun, greeting each dawn as it has for over 4,000 years. The sound environment changes as evening approaches. The heat-driven wind that stirred the air during the day begins to calm, and you can hear sounds that were masked earlier. The distant call to prayer from a mosque in the nearby village, the soft conversation of other visitors at the viewpoint, the rustle of your clothing as you shift position on the warm stone. The sun touches the horizon now, a disk of molten gold that seems to balance on the edge of the world. The pyramids are silhouetted against the sky, their geometric forms creating a dramatic contrast with the organic curves of the desert landscape. This is the moment that photographers and artists have sought to capture for generations, when the ancient monuments seem to glow with their own inner light. As the sun disappears below the horizon, the sky above begins its transformation from day to night. The deep blue of twilight spreads across the heavens, and the first stars begin to appear. Venus, bright and steady, hangs low in the western sky, following the sun toward the horizon. The ancient Egyptians saw Venus as a manifestation of the goddess Isis, and its appearance seems fitting in this place where earth and sky, ancient and eternal, come together in perfect harmony. The pyramids fade gradually into silhouettes against the darkening sky, their precise geometries becoming suggestions rather than clear forms. But even in darkness, their presence remains powerful, monuments to human ambition and divine aspiration that have watched over this landscape since the dawn of recorded history. You sit quietly on the cooling stone, feeling the weight of time and the enduring power of human creativity, as the ancient stars wheel overhead in their eternal dance. The night air carries the scent of cooling stone and distant cooking fires from the village below. Somewhere in the darkness, the monuments continue their patient vigil, waiting for tomorrow's sunrise to reveal them once again to wondering eyes, as they have done for over 4,000 years and will continue to do for a millennia.